This question is about the definition of when to use a semicolon. A semicolon is for two independent clauses. For instance, John jumped, he fell. For two independent clauses, you can also separate them, by the way, with a comma fanboy. So we can also say John jumped, comma, and he fell. And we do have two independent clauses here. Savile is not the protagonist of Shelley's novel. And in the second part, she's the occasion of it. So around the two independent clauses with the semicolon in between, we have a lot of other stuff, in particular, a dependent clause and a modifier. So let's quickly define a dependent clause. A clause has a subject and a verb. For instance, John jumped. But a dependent clause, as opposed to the independent clause John jumped, would say since John jumped. It needs a weak conjunction at the front. We could say since John jumped, after John jumped, as John jumped. And that's what we have here. As Spivak points out. So if we said Spivak points out, that has a subject and a verb, points out, or Spivak points, that's the subject verb combination. But once we put the word as in the front, it becomes dependent. So we have a dependent clause followed by an independent clause. Dependent followed by independent, by the way, gets a comma, but independent followed by a dependent gets no comma. So we have a dependent clause followed by an independent clause. That part is okay. Then we have our semicolon, and we have the word rather right here. Rather, as the recipient of the letters, she's the occasion. So rather, right there, is a modifier, because anything that's missing the subject, the verb, or both is a modifier, and simply having the word rather only is missing a lot of stuff, so that's a modifier. And in orange here, we have another modifier. And it is okay to have two modifiers in a row. So the format of this sentence says dependent clause, independent clause, semicolon, modifier, modifier, independent clause. But pretty much your dependent clause and your modifiers are these disposable parts of the sentence. The part that really needs to make sense in your mind happens if you cross out all of your modifiers and see Savile is not the protagonist of Shelley's novel, she's the occasion of it. So this works perfectly with answer choice C.